Hello, everyone, and welcome to War of the Stars, a Star Wars podcast. Come to you, as always, from deep within the Outer Rim, far beyond the watchful eyes, the Galactic Empire. My name is John Mark Tolley. Joining me today, as always, are my two co-hosts,
Garrett K. Jones
and Brian Karasik.
Yes. All right. Well, how are you fellows today?
I'm fair to middling.
I'm weary.
I'm awake.
It was a long day of throwing a six-year-old around in the pool today, so I'm a bit tired out. Bear in mind, it was the 6-year-old to whom I related, so that takes a bit of the curse off it. But even so, it's still tiring.
Yeah. Well, I hope everyone who in America had a happy Labor Day. And if you don't live in America, well, happy Monday.
Yeah.
And if you live in Canada,
we're sorry.
Go eat a donut.
No, we love the Canadians. I'm a hockey fan.
I'm a Tim Hortons fan. I respect it.
They did give us that.
I haven't even had a Tim Hortons yet.
My favorite Canadian joke ever, and there are many, is in the Clerks miniseries. There's a flashback to the time when the president of Canada, who is portrayed as a straight-up caveman, sells the mineral rights to all of Canada to an American businessman in exchange for the debilitating polio virus. So it's a bit of a deep cut.
Huh.
Anyway,
we're not talking about Canada.
Yes, tell us what we're talking about, Mark.
Well, today we're kind of continuing a little bit part of our discussion yesterday. We're going to be discussing, it's week 1 of the month. So it is our lore week, and this week we are discussing the Clone Wars. Yeah. So, yeah, for me, I find, because this is something that we'd heard about from the very beginning, like one of the very,
10 minutes in episode 4,
very first real conversations that Obi-Wan has with Luke. He mentions the Clone Wars. He mentioned, and
everyone.
It just, I think, in all of our heads, it just kind of sparked this, like, what is that? Clone Wars. And now, did you guys?
I can't wait. I can't wait till 2001 when we learn about that.
Yes. Did you guys think, like, I thought for the longest time it was going to be the clones were going to be the bad guys. That it was going to be more like, like Skynet, except with clones, where it's these people that are fighting against these evil clones that are coming at them, and not what we. I mean, I love what we got, but for the longest time, that's what I thought the Clone Wars were going to be. Was someone is making these clones and sending them to attack the poor people of the Republic.
When I first heard about it, like as a kid, it never dawned on me that it was actually an event. Like I didn't even think that much about it, because for me it was just a bit of throwaway dialogue as a kid.
Yeah.
And so I'm just like, oh, okay, he said something about a war. Cool. They fought together. Great.
Yeah.
It didn't dawn on me that it was going to be something so much more substantial for the saga. And until we get to later on, until we start getting the prequels coming out. But the thing that really caught my attention was the fact that, like, when I was reading through the second book in Timothy Zahn's Thrawn trilogy, Dark Force Rising, it ends on that cliffhanger of a bunch of clone pods being exposed on one of the dreadnoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, whoa. The implications of cloning your own army or cloning something super dangerous are far-reaching. This could be interesting.
Yeah.
And I never connected the pieces until 2002 when Attack of the Clones comes out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as with most things, I think that the origins of the Clone Wars can be found in Palpatine's history. In the Darth Plagueis book, Palpatine and Plagueis both go to see sort of an oracle who's quite famous in the galaxy as having these divine visions and portents. And she speaks to them of dreams she's had of machines of metal going to war against machines of flesh and the terrible cost that takes on the galaxy. Now, they both take note of this and then kill her. But it's an interesting little window on it, and I wonder to what extent that gave them the idea. But when I first started Clone Wars, I was envisioning armies made of clones of famous warriors. You know, like the Star Wars version of here's Genghis Khan and Alexander the Great and Tommy Lee Jones, and we've cloned them all and sent them into battle because those are our nation's greatest heroes, whatever. I also like the ramifications of cloning one's own army. I'll back to Darth Plagueis. At one point in that book, Darth Plagueis is looking for a species he can attempt to breed force sensitivity into. And so he's trying to get the Canotians to produce this reptilian humanoid that is famously aggressive, but take out some of the aggression. And they're like, that's part of his DNA. Like, if we take that out, it won't be a viable organism, which is a pretty neat touch.
I mean, and the implications on that, I think, are pretty substantial, because, like, if you think about it, being able to just generate, troop after troop after troop, I mean, everything's just, I mean, there's going to be a cost, but the question I think that generates more for me is, one, what is more financially stable? Because, I mean, there are companies that make whole livings off of producing droids, so it's not going to be any skin off their back. They're just going to keep making money hand over fist because there's a huge droid army. But on the other hand, you have, if you're on the side of the Republic, you are interacting with these soldiers who are specifically bred for one purpose, and that is to fight and die. And what's interesting is the Jedi knowingly, and this comes to the ethics of it, the Jedi knowingly condone, if not endorse, the creation of the clone army as slaves, slaves specifically. And it really brings into question the ethics. Now, I'm not normally a fan of the Jedi being painted in such a bleak, morally gray light, but by the point that we get into the depth of the Clone Wars, there's some things that they are participating in that it's not a good color on them.
Well, Garrett, as you know, I am a fan of that, and I'm going to go ahead and mention that for 1,000 years, the Jedi have been indoctrinating child soldiers to do their bidding, bringing in unwilling infants to be members of a religious cult. They basically just show up, and it's such a given thing. Parents are just like, "Oh, great, here you go, take them." Never see the parents again. So the gray area definitely exists. It's more, I mean, granted, given the opportunity, I would in a second sign up for that. So yeah, by all means, take me and let me be one of those child soldiers. But from an objective point of view, that gray area well predated the Clone Wars. I wanted to ask you guys, I was disappointed to learn in the Bad Batch, I think that's where we learn it, that Order 66 was a chip implanted in these clones. Like
that was done in actually season 6 of the Clone Wars.
Okay, thank you. So we learned that it's a chip. I always thought it was just like programmed into them, like at Genesis.
No, because there's an episode in season 6 where, and I can't remember the name of the episode. Everybody out there in the comment section on email, wherever, you can let us know. But but there was an episode where there's one of the clones, the chip malfunctions and goes off early,
right? And
he tries killing one of the, and they basically they put it in like it's a failsafe,
It's I'm looking at here. It's Clone Trooper Tup is scheduled for transport to Coruscant, where Chancellor Palpatine's own doctors will closely examine it. Arc Trooper 5's breaks protocol and defies orders to dig up answers, and discovers that there is an organic construct of unknown purpose hidden in the brains of all clone troopers. That's season 6, episode 3, entitled "The Fugitive."
Speaking of gray areas, organic construct, control chip. How did you feel about that? Because I was a little disappointed it wasn't just keyed in at at birth. It seemed a little labor intensive to me that they're plugging a chip into every one of these 1.2 million.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any thoughts? Nobody cared. That's the
Yeah,
little.
it does. I mean, I understand they needed a way for there to be, a reason why some of the clones did, would have not turned. It's like, well, they had the chip removed, so they didn't have that programming put in them. But you're right; it does seem very labor. But then again, I mean, this is the same. The Republic and the later the Empire wasn't necessarily always known for doing the most cost-effective.
True. True. I didn't have a real protestation about it. It was like, I thought it would have been cooler if it was just programmed into them, because we learned in the Vader comics that there was quite a few other orders there. It wasn't that didn't start counting at 66.
There was actually one that was specifically designed for the clones to arrest or eliminate the Chancellor.
Right, you mentioned that.
Yeah, which I find is so, because Palpatine had to have okayed that beforehand, knowing that, like, this will never be used.
Right. It would be funny if he named it Order 66 and there was no other protocols, like just that one. They're like, I think he's up to something, but those Kaminoans, they don't care. I said Kenoshians earlier. Sorry about that. Kaminoans.
I know. What's your problem with people from Kenosha?
sorry, Kenoshians.
Man, those poor Wisconsins are just going to be poor that you blame them.
I've been watching How I Met Your Mother. I don't know what to tell you.
Anyway.
Incidentally, you mentioned the people making money off of droids. And friends, let me take a moment to bring you some words from one of our sponsors, Industrial Automaton. Remember, folks, you've got a friend at Industrial Automaton. Come pick one out today. Back to you.
So here's something interesting. I just pulled up the information on the contingency orders for the Grand Army of the Republic. Order initiation orders 1 through 150. There's a total of 150 contingency orders.
Dang.
And 66 falls right in the middle of all of these. So here are the known orders. Order number 4. In the event the Supreme Chancellor or Supreme Commander is incapacitated, overall Grand Army of the Republic command shall fall to the Vice Chair of the Senate until a successor is appointed or alternative authority identified as outlined in Section 6.
Okay.
Order number 5. In the event that the Supreme Commander or Chancellor being declared unfit to issue orders as defined in Section 6, the Chief of Defense Staff shall assume GAR command and form a strategic cell of senior officers. See page 1173, paragraph 4, until a successor is appointed or alternative authority is identified. 37. Capture of a single wanted individual through the mass arrest and threatened execution of a civilian population. Follow-up directives include scenarios for body disposal of civilian casualties and suppression of communications. What
was that again?
In order to capture a single wanted individual through mass arrest. And threatened execution of civilian population.
I think I remember. Yeah, I remember that one.
They do something like that.
Yeah.
Then Order 65, in the event of either a majority in the Senate declaring the Supreme Commander or Chancellor to be unfit to issue orders, or the Security Council declaring him or her to be unfit to issue orders, and an authenticated order being received by the GAR, Commander shall be authorized to detain the Supreme Commander with lethal force if necessary, and command of the GAR shall fall to the acting Chancellor until a successor is appointed or alternative authority identified as outlined in Section 6. So yeah, there's some really questionable orders that were programmed in, and I'm pretty sure that the reason why Order 66 was put in place the way it was is because it would then supersede Order 65.
Yeah.
But I think Brian makes a valid point that the orders should have been something that was pre-programmed into them, like almost like like with all the studying that they do, being a subliminal message all the way through all their training and programming. Because I think that would make more sense for them to have that rather than some kind of malfunctioning control chip. I think while the control chip does make for a fun series of episodes in season 6, it becomes kind of a catch-22 because what happens when you've got all these people who keep finding out about the chips? Eventually they have them removed.
I would have thought that chip would have like a built-in failsafe where if it malfunctions in any way, it just detonates.
Yeah.
Like
Okay, so to focus a little bit more broadly on the Clone Wars as a whole, when we first see the clones marching out there, of course, none of them actually existed. There was no physical clone armor, which props to people who cosplay clone troopers because they are the first people to have built that armor. All of it is CGI in the films on screen. That was a great moment for me. Like it's just, and don't they, if I remember correctly, isn't there like a hint of the Imperial March that plays when we first see them? Like offloading.
Yeah.
That's a great scene. Like to an Empire patriot like myself, like seeing the roots of the plant we know will grow was really, really cool to see. I liked it. And I can tell you, I did not give a hoot about any of the clones, like as characters, as a story, like they're a plot device, move on, bring on the red lightsabers. But like by the end of Clone Wars, I was on board. And by the end of the first episode of Bad Batch, even more so. Just they made an amazing war movie out of that cloth. And I really appreciate that they did that because, to spring from Garrett, to call back to what you said earlier, I think George Lucas also used that as a throwaway line. I don't think he had any Clone Wars in mind when he used that. It just sounded something that sounded space agey. George Lucas is a world builder, and part of world building is throwing in things that refer to a past that doesn't exist. And he did such a good job, like building on to it, and then his legacies, I think, has really been borne out.
I want to disagree with that because with regards to the Clone Wars, I think there's more involved there than we realize, because while the dialogue itself may have been throwaway, knowing the way that Lucas built everything up and the way he plotted things out, like he probably had some notebook filled with some scaffolding of what took place and how things got started. Maybe not all the gross details that we get throughout the films and the animated series, but for sure he had some skeleton of what kickstarted it, what major events were, how the fighting was supposed to take place, stuff like that.
Yeah,
I'll believe it. I don't really buy that Lucas had the whole story planned out the way he always said he did. Like he's a world builder, including his own world.
Yeah,
there's too many gaps in, like, why do we never hear the word Padawan in the original trilogy? Why do we never hear about Qui-Gon Jinn in the original trilogy? I don't think he had it all written out the way he said, but I do think definitely he had a framework built around that. So yeah. I can see your point. I think I may have spoken too soon when I said he would just throw it away. Not the first time you've convinced me otherwise, Garrett. Stop that. I'm supposed to be a Star Wars fan.
Oh man, I just wait. I'll convince you yet that Starkiller is a much better character than Palpatine.
I will go back to Stargate. I swear to God.
Well, let's get in.
I have got the set headdress. I will wear it to work.
Wow.
They said dress for the job you have, not the one you want.
Show up as a full-on gold. Hello. All right, thanks. This is Gate of the Stars. Thanks for tuning in.
Oh man,
That's our new podcast.
Friend of the show.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah, Jay Davison here, I guess.
Well, let's get into, we got to talk about the show. We talked about it a little bit.
Let's go ahead and talk about the Clone Wars.
Yeah. Why not?
Wait, haven't we been doing that already?
Kinda. Yeah, we have.
Well, we got into it last week, as we said, but there's more to cover.
Yeah, you kind of hinted at, we kind of talked about it before. in other episodes, but the fact that one thing I think the Clone Wars series really did, and we got to give a big thanks to Filoni for. I mean, he was in many ways the father of the Clone Wars series.
For
I
sure.
mean, Lucas, kind of might have kind of started it, but as far as the meat and potatoes of that show, that is Dave Filoni's baby.
Lucas built that kitchen, but Filoni sure cooked it.
Yeah. And I mean, humanizing the clones, giving them names, giving
I
them
love that they give
personality.
themselves nicknames based on their serial numbers. That's just so cool.
Yeah,
Like,
or stuff
whatever they can use to differentiate themselves, because they
Yeah.
know they're clones. There's 1.2 million of them. Like, what are you gonna do? Get a funny face tattoo?
Yeah. And what I love about them is even though they're all voiced by the same person, they're all D. Bradley Baker. Is
Right, not Tim Ware Morrison. I was really surprised to learn.
is even when they have the helmets on, I can still vocally tell the difference. I can tell when it is, or even when they have the helmets off, so you don't see the color of the helmets. I can still tell when it is Rex talking, or when it's Cody talking, or when it's Fives, because even though they have the same voice, you can see in the inflection and the attitude, like, okay, that's Captain Rex talking.
That's Baker too. I mean, the man is a force of nature. He should win an Emmy for each clone.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and we're talking about the same guy that, he voiced like pretty much every animal character in any animated series you've ever watched for the last 20 years.
Yeah. He is. Yeah, amazing.
My daughter's 6.5, and she really knows what makes Dad happy. So we'll be watching a show, and she's like, "Dad, don't you think Buttercup sounds like Tommy from Rugrats?" Yes, I do.
But yeah, my daughter, her favorite character in Clone Wars is Rex. Rex.
How do you feel about the retconning of that rando in Return of the Jedi to be Rex? Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, I know who you're talking about. There's a scene where there's one of the rebel soldiers. He's got a big beard and he looks similar to Rex, and that started people kind of wondering like, oh, what if that could be Rex? And then Disney eventually
did
retcon it so that it is Rex.
It would make me happy to know that they actually aimed the character at that. Like, they gave him that character design in Clone Wars because of that guy in Return of the Jedi. Because presumably somewhere, that background actor who played that guy is like, "You're right, I'm Rex."
Yeah, there
he is. Look at him go. See, it's perfect. That was on purpose. That's not just fanfic there. That is that dude.
Yeah.
So,
anyway, I love the interconnected woven threads that lead through there. I mentioned last week, we see Ahsoka teach Saw Gerrera how to take out an enemy tank with a grenade, and that's and then we see Saw Gerrera's guys do that in Rogue One in the Jedha Marketplace. I love that sort of thing. It's just little pinpoints, little red threads on the wall. It's great.
One of my favorite episodes, and I can't remember the name of it, but there is one because there's a line in the crawl of episode 3 where it's talking about the Clone Wars going on, and there's a line in there about heroes on both sides. And there's an episode where she has to go to a planet that is part of the CIS, and you see the war from their point of view, like, and the person, like, the CIS Senate, and how they view Dooku as a savior. Yeah. They view Dooku as a hero, as someone who is trying to get them out from under the boot of the Republic.
I've said it before, nobody's the villain of their own story, and I love that kind of storytelling.
Except I wish that if I had one complaint about the Clone Wars, I wish there would have had more episodes like that, because a lot of times when they did, usually what would happen is the person would turn around and join the Republic. They'd see like, oh, the Separatists are all evil. We need to join the good guys. And there were so many times where the leaders of the Separatists, the generals, were all mustache twirling villains. And I wish there would have just been a little bit more nuance with the Confederation with the Separatists.
You don't have an interplanetary political movement that has no validity to it. Not that many states, that many planets would not be behind it if there wasn't some reason. And we see in many instances, the shortcomings of the Republic. No wonder there was a separatist movement. Of course there was. And we see the villains because they are the villains. But I like that moment. Dooku, as you said, he was a hero to a lot of people. He was only tyrannous when he was on screen. And what? I think he gets short shrift. I don't think it's fair that Count Dooku is the only Sith Lord who is never referred to by his Sith title. Right? Like, how many times do you hear Sidious called Sheev Palpatine? No, everybody calls him Sidious, Palpatine. I go with that. But Dooku, time and again, it's never Darth Tyrannus. Everyone around it.
He is referred to as Lord Tyrannus by Palpatine at, I believe it was the end of Attack of the Clones, and there's a few episodes in the Clone Wars where he's referred to as Lord Tyrannus. Okay. And you can hear that very clearly.
I mean, in the fandom, but yeah.
But
I grant you.
But because his public persona was so very public, more so like Palpatine was able to delineate how he behaved in public, both as Sidious as well as himself. He's just playing. He's playing two different characters, and it's the way I liken Palpatine doing this during the Clone Wars is the real version of him is Darth Sidious. Palpatine is the mask, kind of like a really evil version of Batman.
Yep.
Yeah.
And whereas
explicitly states that in the Episode 3 novel.
Whereas Dooku, his more public persona is his true self. That's who he is, because ultimately he's a character who was raised in nobility. He's got that higher mentality of importance, and he likes having that public recognition, even if he doesn't admit to it. He really does.
Yeah,
he liked that fame. He liked infamy, and because
the cape and the twirling the salutes. Yeah, he was a showman.
Oh yeah,
razzle dazzle. I respect it.
And while he was easily swayed to the dark side by Palpatine, especially in light of what happened with the Jedi Order back during his younger days, and with Qui-Gon being killed off by Darth Maul, it was all playing to his own vanity. And I think we're starting to delve more into a character breakdown of Dooku more than anything at this point. But
we'll come back to that.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah, we definitely need to. Let's put a pin in that for a while, and then
something to consider. And I said this when we were talking about the rebellion and whatnot. But one person's terrorist is another person's hero. It's all a matter of perspective.
Yeah.
Well put.
I try.
Yeah.
It's a shame that Attack of the Clones is generally, I think, perceived to be one of the weaker films in the saga, because it should be telling an amazing slice of that story. As I said, we've been waiting since 1977 to see this Clone War elaborated. And
I think a lot of that is because we only get that at the tail end. Like the entire movie is setting up for that. And at the end is when we see the clones come in at the very end.
Called it Attack of the Awkward Date between teenagers.
Yeah.
What they should have done from a storytelling perspective is they should have actually set the action in the midst of the Clone Wars, having that going through, and then telling all the build up to how how the Clone Wars started in flashbacks, like doing it as non-linear storytelling, because like you see that happen in the Clone Wars series already with the non-linear storytelling, where you have these little flashbacks of what happened prior to the story actually taking place. And I think if Lucas had been, instead of rushing through the production and trying to just do the every 3 years like he had with the original trilogy, and pushing the CGI as much as he did, if he had planned out having that non-linear storytelling with snippets done in flashback, I think it would have been, he would have saved so much time on unnecessary exposition, and he would have told a much stronger story, because then we would have had, because you hear something like Attack of the Clones, there should be way more action in a title like that, and
way more attacks and way more clones.
Bingo.
I mean, we have an amazing war movie in Rogue One. That is just a classic vintage war movie, a World War II movie set in space. And I would have liked to have seen a real war movie where we see the attack of the clones, not just the gradual marching of the clones off of ships. Because it just calls into question too much of like, why are the Jedi trusting these clones? Like the entire provenance of this clone army is highly suspect, and like their genetic template is a known bounty hunter. Like it just doesn't seem like the sort of situation Jedis would sign off on. But I'm not gonna throw stones. It's an epic arc. I just wish we had gotten more of it. But that's why they gave us a TV show. And honestly, say what you will, I'm glad we got that story told by Dave Filoni and not George Lucas.
So here's what I would have done if I had been in charge of that storytelling. Aside from the non-linear storytelling that I mentioned just a moment ago, I would actually have all the stuff happening on the battlefield with the clones. That's where Kenobi is.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why he and Anakin are separated for so long, because there's an assassination attempt, because like have Padme and Bail Organa and a bunch of their senatorial friends trying to find a way to curb the production of more clones, trying to stop and create a ceasefire. They're they're negotiators. Let's have them do that.
Anybody could see the ramifications of clones, it would be Padme.
Right.
Yeah.
But the assassination attempt that kicks off the entire film, have that happen still, but don't go in some convoluted way of doing it. Have just Jango, like, instead of having Jango Fett, or maybe keep Jango Fett. I mean, it works either way, because he becomes that dovetail clue that leads Kenobi and Anakin in the same direction. But if you have Anakin go off to be her protector, having them on the run as they're trying to escape a ship that's heading towards a battle, that would make it more epic, because like maybe they're heading towards a planet with clone troops. They're trying to create an opportunity for ceasefire, and Jango Fett has snuck on board and he's trying to assassinate her. And the only way to protect her is for Anakin to take her off the ship.
Well, if we're talking about redoing the prequels, I personally would have set the episode 1 with Anakin being much older. I would have had him start out with him already part of the Jedi Order. So that make as a Padawan, and him meeting Padme as a bit older. So it doesn't seem as creepy when
it really puts a weird shade on how young he was when they met.
Yeah. And then
in both directions, like the fact that he still carries that torch for her 9 years later.
Yeah.
She's into it. Yeah.
Still have them be younger, but have him be maybe 14 and be in, starting, in his path as a Padawan. And you could have, like you said, the same thing with you, like you suggested with episode 2. You could do the flashbacks of finding him on Tatooine, but then you can have, so episode 1 is them meeting each other.
But then we don't get a whole hour of pod racing.
Thank you. Yeah. I was going to say, I don't know if we needed to see every minute of the pod race in real time.
Well, it's George Lucas, and George Lucas has a thing for a car race.
I mean, nothing but love for Greg Proops' announcer character, but give me a break.
Yeah.
I did like seeing Jabba waving to the crowd. I thought that was a nice moment. But though that moment is all I needed. You know, like, and you know, so the sound effects. I like the way they did. There's some fun stuff there, but it is about an hour, and it feels like 4.
Yeah,
but I digress.
Anyway, yeah, there are just so many great episodes of the Clone Wars, and you know, I love the fact that they would go off on these, not necessarily tangents, but on these episodes that would be geared, you know, focusing on not just like Anakin or Obi-Wan or Ahsoka. You know, there's entire 3, it'll be, you know, maybe 3 or 4 episodes, you know, where there wouldn't be a single Jedi in them.
Oh, did we meet Cad Bane in the Clone Wars? That's what was where.
Yes. Yeah.
Cheers for Cad Bane. I love that character. So glad to see him in the Book of Boba Fett. Not bad at all. Well played.
Yeah.
Do you think Cad Bane has in his contract that he must be allowed the opportunity to dramatically approach his prey on a dusty street? I think it really in his wheelhouse. Like he's got the whole outfit going. He's like, I'm gonna have to walk up to him from 100 yards with nothing around me but sun and dust. And can we have the sun setting behind me?
Yeah,
5% off if you can do that.
The only thing that I'm disappointed in his appearance in Book of Boba Fett is he didn't have his droid with him.
I was just
that droid was hilarious. What?
I forgot about the droid. I was just
that droid was hilarious.
Again. What species is Cad Bane? Do we know? Is he a Gand?
No, he is. Cad Bane is a Duros.
Oh, okay. Zuckuss is a Gand. I thought there might be blue Gands, but I forget all species other than humans all look exactly alike.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm saying, except for I guess Twi'leks vary in color and tattoos, but that's about it. Other than that, it's like,
come on, Zabraks look totally different.
You know what's funny now that we mention it? The Gungans. What the heck is Boss Nass? Like he's just so dysmorphic from the rest of the Gungans.
No. He's a Gungan. He's just super heavy. I'm sorry. We have to be body positive. He's super full bodied.
I think you gotta say thick.
God, I hate that phrase.
So dumb. I hate the spelling of it, but we can go into that later. That's just. I always thought that was funny. But yeah, I forgot about and Cad Bane is a great character. I'm a fan of bounty hunters, not to the extent that many are, but I like the that whole concept that the law enforcement in the galaxy is so deficient that there's an entire industry of people who make up for that gap.
Well, I think when you have a huge disparity between one political entity and the people living under it in such a huge expansive area, I think it lends itself to black market operatives like that.
Oh, speaking of black market operatives, how can we forget everyone's favorite pirate, Hondo?
I'm aware of his work. I tired of Hondo Anaka instantly in Rebels because I don't think I'm overstating this to say that literally every time we meet him, he apologizes for having betrayed the protagonist last time, promises not to again,
and does it anyway.
And
like I don't get his charm. Like why are you buying it? It's like, you know what it reminds me of, and this is a bit of a jump. The Venn diagram here is narrow, but he reminds me of Jim Carrey's character in a series of unfortunate events. Because every episode, everyone's like, "Oh no, he'll be fine." No, he betrayed us. Curse you, Onaka! Damn your sudden but inevitable treachery. I can't bear it.
Yeah, no, he's one of those characters like in a darker version of the Clone Wars stories. Like I could have seen Anakin finally having his fill of it and just like cornering him by themselves and then like using the Force to choke him out.
Yeah, just kill him. He brings nothing to the table. All he does is rob you. Sometimes trick you first, but always rob you. Shoot, I thought Ezra Bridger was going to go to the dark side for him, but no. We got to talk about Rebels too. By the way, I got strong feelings in Ezra Bridger. We'll leave that till another episode. But
you mean Space Aladdin?
Yeah. Yes. Did I tell you that? Because
that's a very common nickname for him. Is Space
Kanan
Aladdin.
Jarrus literally calls him a street rat in episode 1.
Guys, Ezra Bridger. I mean, yeah, we're going off topic, but come on, he can show you the world.
I will say that if you wanted to walk in the sky, building a bridge is a way to do it. So I think I think Bridger Skywalker has some connections there, but and I'm just gonna put this out there. Bridger uses the Force to mind control someone into suicide at a couple hundred yards range, which is extraordinarily powerful. We've never seen anyone do that before or since. It's a very dark side thing to do, and it's never addressed again. I thought we were going to see some more of that.
I would like to see more characters do that, especially dark side characters.
Yeah, I didn't know that was on the table. I mean, Kenobi had to be looking him in the eye to trick him into like, these aren't the droids you're looking for. Ezra goes, ugh. And that ATST turns around and walks off a platform. That's suicide.
Think about the Inquisitors. How inefficient was it during the post Clone Wars era, where, like, I mean, they could have easily walked in and forced someone's mind to give them the information, like Kylo did with Rey, or even better, pulling an Ezra Bridger and having them unalive themselves.
Right.
And yet they sit there and they pad the runtime. They pad the runtime with these inefficient threats of violence.
Yeah.
You know, I could touch on that a little bit in that we learn in the Darth Bane trilogy that Bane derives power from the fear that he engenders in his victims. So I could see the Inquisitors kind of charging their batteries a little bit with those threats of violence. But that's well after the Clone Wars concludes, so we should probably revisit that at a later date.
Yes.
What's your wrap up thought, John Mark? What do you think? Clone Wars, do we need more episodes of the Bad Batch to round this out? Do we need another extra?
Yeah. I mean, that's one thing. I getting sort of with the Bad Batch, even though most of the Bad Batch takes place after the Clone Wars series, I thought it was the perfect wrap up to that.
It's a coda, yeah. It's gorgeous.
It was like a perfect little bow. We're moving on into Rebels, but the Clone Wars show itself was amazing. I loved the season 7. I know some people had ups and downs about it, but overall, I think, especially the last episode, seeing Order 66 from Ahsoka's point of view, that final scene of her was it Rex? Was that Rex? Yes, it was Rex. Burying all of his comrades, and then Vader picking up her lightsaber at the end was just so cool.
I liked Maul being disappointed that it wasn't Kenobi he was fighting. Like, Maul's got this, like, Kenobi's the only Jedi there is.
Yeah, and how
that's
terrified.
One of the great rivalries is the Kenobi Maul relationship.
And how terrified Kenobi was of what was going to happen, or not Kenobi, but Maul was. Like, utter, just like when he's in that prison and he realizes what's going on. And I'm sorry, I love the Darth Vader hallway scene in Rogue One, but the Maul hallway scene where he's taking out the clone troopers as Order 66 is going on, when he literally decapitates somebody. Like, they don't show up, but
at the end of a hallway, man. You
just see that door turn sideways and fly through the air, and just like,
Yep. It's a beautiful thing. I'm so glad that's, to me, the two greatest things we get from the Clone Wars are the introduction and development of Ahsoka Tano and the conversion of Darth Maul into an actual character. I love Asajj Ventress, but I think she's got enough love. But I don't know that people appreciate how disappointing it was to see Maul presented to us in episode 1 and then immediately killed. I mean, you guys remember the episode 1 lead up. It was everywhere. Maul's face, Maul's lightsaber, Maul's face, Maul's lightsaber. And he's 17 minutes in and he's dead. I was really, really glad to see what they did with Maul in the Clone Wars.
I heard a little snippet of an interview with Sam Witwer, talking about doing the voice for Maul, and he was talking about what it's like to work for Lucasfilm, and he said when you do them a favor, they remember it. And he was talking about how usually voice actors, they're usually pay for play. You know, you get paid, you do the gig, you get paid for that, and that's it. Well, when they were getting ready to do like a commercial, and they told them, we're doing this like ad campaign, and we're using Maul. Maul is going to be in it, but it's going to be you. It's going to be the cartoon Maul. And they said, we're going to make sure you get royalties from that, so that anytime Maul shows up on screen for anything that's officially part of Lucasfilm, Sam Witwer will get a royalty check.
And he deserves it. Witwer is instrumental in the recontextualization of that character as more than just a bit player. He's
so smart. If you watch any interview with him, like where he's talking, he's sitting behind, and they're doing this whole thing and be like, yeah, but wouldn't this and this, and everyone realizes like, oh, this guy knows his stuff.
Yeah, sure.
Even before he was on, got the job as Starkiller or Maul, he knows his stuff.
I love Ray Park's work, but that's not even his voice in the film. And
it's Peter Serafinowicz.
Yeah. Park brought Maul to life, but Witwer made him a character. And seeing I forget, does Witwer also do Maul in Rebels?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
and
good. So
he did the voice, even though that was Ray Park in the outfit at the end of Solo. That was Sam Witwer's voice.
Okay, I thought I remembered that.
At the end of Solo.
Yeah,
so,
that makes it.
Yeah.
That arc is where we see a character who was arguably a cardboard cutout in the first film into a legitimate villain. And the stuff about those spider leg stuff, like a living on hate and all that. Everybody knows that a Zabrak's internal organs are all above the waist. You cut their legs off, it's no big deal. But it's a great moment. I was one when I saw Saw Gerrera's artificial foot step into frame in the trailer for Rogue One. I was like, it's Maul! Because anybody with an electronic foot has got to be Maul in my mind.
Yes.
But that's so. Again, I think that's the best things that Clone Wars brought us: are Ahsoka Tano as the character completely, and Maul as the character that I would have liked to have seen on the big screen.
Yeah, definitely. I would agree with that.
Definitely. All right. Well, I think this is a good place to wrap up this week. Good conversation. Clone Wars, guys, of course, as always, tell us your thoughts on the Clone Wars on our Facebook group. Just search for War of the Stars and Star Wars Star Wars Podcast. Or on Twitter, which we will give all that information here in a second. But first, Brian, why don't you tell the people out there where they can find you?
You can find me on Facebook at the Sith Library and Archives. We're a lovingly tended collection of Sith culture, lore, art, and jokes. My favorite one I get reported for every year on Easter. So tune in at Easter, you'll see the Darth Maul meme that's gotten me reported 7 years running. But yeah, check me out. I post as Darth Corrosis. You can find me on Instagram as Corrosis, Corrosis. That's my Sith name from the 1980s West End Games role-playing game, and I've stuck with it.
All right. Garrett, what about you?
Well, you guys can find me on Instagram and X at GKJ_publishing, where I talk about my books, The Archives of Async Ran. It's currently 5 books in an ongoing fantasy series that does have a couple of visual nods to Star Wars and my love for it. But I also talk about my show, The Right Way, where we talk book recommendations, author interviews, and creative writing tips. I'm getting ready to launch season 7 here we are at the beginning of September in a month and a half, and I'm looking forward to it. Got some great interviews already in the can and ready to produce and put out for people. But I did want to announce I'm working on a new writing project. It is an anthology of short stories that I've been working on for the last couple of years. The stories I've been working on for the last couple of years, but the idea for this project came about in the last month and a half, where I had a relative of mine suggest I collate and collect all of these short stories that I've been working on over the last few years and turn it into an anthology. So that's what I'm going to be doing. The project is called Midnight Playground.
Cool. Look forward to that. As for us right here, of course, if you want to get a hold of us, warthestars1@gmail.com. Instagram is at war_of_the_stars1. You also can get a hold of us on X. It is at warthestars1. Check us out on YouTube at SWChild, which that will be changing soon. There's some big news coming on about for that. Just give me a second. My wife just texted me.
Always important to respond to the command structure.
Oh, it was nothing. It was a group text.
Word from the Grand Admiral.
Yes. Anyway, where was I? Oh, yes. News coming on that for my other show, Star Wars: The Eyes of a Child, where myself and my daughter are going through, as we just discussed now, the very show we just talked about, the Clone Wars, in chronological order, and discussing it. So yeah, of course, we are proudly a part of Geek News Now. Check out Geek News Now on YouTube and Spotify, and always remember Geek News Now official if you are on YouTube. And check out all the other shows that are part of that network. If you want to support the show, you can do so by going to Ko-fi.com. It is ko/fi.com/War of the Stars. And you can help support the show there. Or you can go to our Spreadshirt shop, spreadshirt.com/shop/war-of-the-stars- to check out our merch.
What do we have coming up next week, guys?
Next week, we are doing a character profile on the Chosen One himself, Anakin Skywalker.
Good kid. A lot of promise.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I don't think anything can go wrong.
Well, up and comer. He's a good fella.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's what we got next week. So until then, as we always say, remember, this is not just my Star Wars. This is not just your Star Wars. This is our Star Wars. Until next time, may the Force be with you.
This is the way.
For the Republic!
We got nothing today. Evil cackle here.